Welcome to the Pitting Combination Podcast. I'm KJ Pilcher alongside Dick Briggs, bringing you our final podcast of the 2022-23 season. NCAA championships are in the books, and I don't know what you think, but this was one of the probably the most unpredictable and exciting NCAA championships I can remember in a long time.
Well, I've been to, I didn't count it up, but I would say 40 national tournaments, and then of course watch other ones, along the way. But I think you're right. This is the most exciting one I can remember. My favorite rounds are the quarterfinals and the semifinals, probably in that order too, because the winners of the quarterfinals are all Americans, so that's exciting to see them when they win. And then, of course, the semifinals, there's still a lot of action going on. If one match isn't really showing you much action, you still got some other ones going on. And then the finals typically tend to be maybe not so exciting. This year, there was some fur flying. I loved it.
I know. And there's, a lot of times there are guys that you can write in as champs in pen. This year, not so much. And I tell you what, from the get-go, I remember the first round Thursday morning, and 125 had like 4 or 5 20 or higher seeds win and advance in that first round. And I was just a sign of things to come because, it was kind of similar to that throughout the tournament that just whoever was at, anybody could win any match.
Right. So you're right. Exactly. Like 25 was the craziest. And in that first round, in those, I'm going to say like maybe 5th to 10 seeds, somewhere in that range, just they seem to all be dropping, maybe even like 4th. I don't remember who was 4th. Was Ramos? Ramos was 4th, I guess.
Ramos was the 4th seed. Yeah.
5th and below. And then, so, and then of course, the number 1 seed, that happened, but it was crazy. And then, like you said, in the finals, nothing was 2-time champs going down, and anyway.
And going down big.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's that 125-pound bracket really quick. And then we'll discuss the state schools, their overall finish here. But in that first round, you had a 28 seed over a 5 seed in Cardinal of West Virginia over Smith of Appalachian State. You had 21 seed Jory Volk of Wyoming over Michael D'Agostino of Northwestern. You had a 20 seed in Jarrett Trombley from North Carolina State advance. And then you had number 27 seed Eddie Ventresca of Virginia Tech win and move on over the number 6 from Northern Colorado. And then you had former Bettendorf standout Jack Wagner, who was the number 26 seed for North Carolina, beat Oregon State's Brandon Kaler 3-1 in the first round. So right there, you could have gotten a feel for what was going on, and of course, the upsets along the way. If you had predicted Spencer Lee, Roman Bravo Young, Dayton Fix were not going to come away with a national title, or that 2 of the 3 wouldn't even make the finals, I think you would have been, they would have gotten you a jacket with sleeves that connect in the back, and may have carted you off. It was, tell you what, it was wild.
Right. And don't forget RBY in that 33 bracket.
No, I mentioned that.
Yeah. So you had Fix, and then of course him. But I have to say that 33 bracket, I just didn't have the guts to to pick on my pick, Aruja, but man, that kid's tough, and I knew he was, and I didn't know he was gonna do what he did in the finals though to RBY. That was incredible. To me, that was the match that was. I mean, it was spectacular. What a great win! He looked really great.
Yeah, he earned outstanding wrestler honors, and that was the thing. He came out that little elbow pass to an outside single for a second takedown. That was one of the slickest moves I think I saw all week. I tell you what, the way he was able to hit that and finish it immediately and go up 4-1, it was just, that was just an eye popper. It was like, wow.
Right.
This kid came to this kid brought it, and then that move that really cemented it, when Bravo Young was riding, had the leg up, kind of holding on to the leg, getting ready to return him, and that trip back and catching RBY on his back for 6. I tell you what, that was impressive, and that pretty much sealed the deal.
Right. So a 10-4 win over the 2-time defending champion. Jeez, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and then that set the stage for Yianni Diakomahalis, who became the 5th 4-time NCAA Division I champion. For Cornell, the only school to have 2 wrestlers in that group. That includes Pat Smith of Oklahoma State, T.L. Sanderson of Iowa State, Logan Stieber of Ohio State, and of course, Big Red's Kyle Dake, who did it first. But Yianni finishes things off. The even cooler thing I thought about it was that his match with Sasso also determined who was going to finish 3rd in the team race. So it wasn't just the four-timer thing at stake. There was the team placing at stake as well. Yianni comes away with a 4-2 win in the final, I believe, and joins that elite group, and then got Cornell tied for its second best finish ever, and best finish since they finished runner-up in 2010, 2011.
Right. And a couple of things about Yianni in the finals match, last maybe 5-second takedown in the second period, something like that really iced it. Obviously didn't have time for Sasso to score, get an escape or anything there. But kudos in the quarterfinals. Yianni's trip to the finals was not a cakewalk. Kudos in the quarterfinals to Max Murin, who almost had him beat. He at the end of the match, Murin's got, nearly tilting Yianni, and Yianni is actually nearly pinning Murin in a defensive fall. So the ref was looking at the defensive fall at the shoulders of Murin, but it was all very close to Murin scoring near fall points, which would have either taken it into overtime with a 2, or if it was a 4, would have won it. So exciting along the way, and it was not easy for Yianni. So
right. The interesting thing there, and I think a lot of people were asking me, is like, why didn't they throw a brick and try to challenge that? Even if it was close, I don't know. I don't think it was near fall anyway. Yianni was sitting up to where he wasn't within that, what was it, 1 or 2 inch, 4-inch range that you have to be within. And I don't, Iowa, they, how do I put this? Though, I mean, those guys are well versed in what to challenge and how to challenge it,
Right.
And they didn't even give it they didn't even put, there was no like turning to each other or grabbing the brick and holding it up. There's nothing like that. They didn't even consider it. So it must not have been something that one, they could do, or they thought was even remotely worth it.
Right. And from the television view, it was not in near fall criteria. It was close. He was very close to getting it, but it was not there. So that's a good no brick throw.
So Iowa overall, 6 All-Americans, including, Max Murin for the first time at the NCAAs. But kind of buried the lead. The Spencer Lee, Matt Ramos semifinal. Ramos coming out with a win and derailing Lee's attempt to become a 4-time champ and join Yianni in that group. Ramos came out with a big move, a takedown right to Lee's back for 4. Lee battled back. It almost had a similar feel a little bit to the dual match, but Ramos with a big move at the end to put Lee on his back. Even without the fall, he was going to hold on and win on points anyway because of the near fall that were in the bank. But Matt Ramos really kind of shocking the world. A lot of people have compared it to McElravy, Marionetti. That match that was in the finals of 95, I think, at Carver Hawkeye Arena. Some have even compared it to Owings, Gable. What did you were you just as stunned as everybody else?
Yes, I was. And as I was watching it, I'm going, no, don't. He was extended, had that body lock around him. Looked like
just kind of hanging there.
Right, but when you're doing that, you're giving up your arms, and this kid, Ramos he's got some big moves, and as we found out, and it was like it was shock. I mean, it was just shock. I was kind of at a viewing party down in Iowa City and watching it, and it was the 5 of us that were there were just like, it was like, did that just really happen? And it kind of got prolonged as he got turned, and then the defeat's there because he's not going to have enough time to recover from that, and then the salt on the wound to get pinned with a couple seconds left, and man, he just felt horrible for and I guess I'm as guilty as anyone. You just kind of expected that that Lee to happen, but when you look back there, he was vulnerable this season. He did go to his back a time or two and just rallied through it, but it just kind of there's a sign there if you look back and think about those times when he did that the guy's more vulnerable than all of us thought maybe.
And he wrestled. So Thursday he came out, looked strong and dominant. He had a pin in 36 seconds, and then just hammered Medley from Michigan, getting a tech fall in 2:30. So he looked like Spencer that was rolling, right?
Yeah.
And then the second period of the quarterfinal against Noto from Lockhaven, he got tilted and gave up 4. There's another time where Noto almost caught him on his back as well. He was able to fight out of that, end up getting an escape, actually. But, you just had a sense like, wow, okay. And he still battled back. He got a takedown in the final seconds to put like one little, exclamation point at the end of it, and won by major still. So thought it was a little bit of a blip. But after the Ramos match, you kind of looked back and thought, yeah, you know what? He was kind of tight in the quarterfinals as well. I don't think it's anything as cliche as the pressure got to him, but it just you could just tell a little bit that Thursday he wasn't in the same mode, and I think Tom Brand's kind of alluded to that a little bit. That he's at his best when he's flowing and moving and kind of on the attack, and maybe he wasn't that that way, especially in the last 30 seconds. And, I really thought where he drug his feet in, got the takedown. First wasn't scored points. Then they went to the review. He got the 2. That put him up 3, I think. And then he had riding time. Thought for sure that was going to be, that kind of sealed it for him. But I did not see what was coming after the restart.
Yeah, and having been through it with my son, a 6th year is not an easy thing. You're a little bit, you're older, you're wrestling potentially guys that were in middle school when you started in college, and
That's true.
and so that's a tough thing. And it's not only physically but emotionally and mentally and that sort of thing. It's tough to do that. You're an adult now, and you should be in your starting your adult life after college, and you prolong that. And so that's a factor, I think, for 6-year guys. And so when that COVID thing goes away, you'll still have 6-year guys with Olympic years possibly, but it'll be fewer. And then throw on the fact with Spencer that here's a guy that every year he wrestled and won a title. It became more and more pressure. And you can say it's not there, but I think it's there a little bit. And then also, the guy's been injured most of his career, with the knees. And so the last couple of years, I don't know how hard he's been able to train in the room when you're kind of watching and protecting possibly, your knee injuries. And so, and shoulder too. Didn't he have a shoulder injury early on in his career? I thought I remembered him wearing a brace. Maybe not. Oh, that was Kemmerer, I guess.
Yeah.
And, anyway, so tack all those things on, and then an explosive wrestler like Ramos, takes advantage of it. So good for him, but just breaks my heart for Lee and for all of those surrounding him. So he's brought so much to this Iowa program, and he's changed it. I mean, he's made people. I believe this. If you're an Iowa fan, you like the Iowa program. But if you're on the fringes and you're not an Iowa fan, but you're maybe some other school fan, he's drawn you into the Iowa program, I think, with the way he's handled himself in front of the media, and with your interviews and everyone's. And so it's just been fun to watch that, and you wish the most for that kid, and doggone, I wish he'd got it.
Yeah. You bring up a good point, and we can talk a little bit about his legacy, and something that I just put together yesterday, kind of just some points from the weekend. One match shouldn't define his legacy, because I think he brought, ever since he committed, there was a different energy that seemed to encompass the Iowa wrestling program. There was, and I remember, one interview where he talked about how his dad always used to say, you need to be a good person as much as a good wrestler, because if you don't have the character part, it doesn't matter how good of a wrestler you are. And he's always kind of held, that's always been a priority for him. And I think it shows from the fact, how he addressed media, and how he, signed autographs for young fans. How, when it comes to the University of Iowa athletics, we saw him at football games. We saw him at baseball games. We saw him at lacrosse or field hockey events, cheering on anything and everything that Iowa athletics was. He was big fans and friends with Tristan Wirfs and Caitlin Clark and Megan Gustafson, and basketball player. He really grabbed the reins he really swung the Iowa flag. And what is still, a great role model. And kind of what you mentioned, Iowa's always been one of those black hat kind of teams, right? The black cowboy hat, the bad guys rolling into town. If you weren't with them, you were against them, kind of thing.
Right.
And I think personalities like Lee and Kemmerer brought some of those other. Well, okay, this is a different Iowa group, right? And he was a big catalyst for that. And I think his impact is well beyond, obviously the results, 2 Hodge trophies, a Sullivan Award, still 3, 3 national titles is nothing to sneeze at, for goodness sakes, right? 3 Big Ten Wrestler of the Year awards. I mean, it's still exceptional. Obviously for him, it may not be how he wanted to see it end, but we've seen that happen to somebody named Gable too, and look how he turned that into one of the best things in his career, as he said it. He said that loss to Larry Owings propelled him into international. That made him. That was the best thing that could ever happen to him going into the Olympics and stuff like that. So hopefully that's the same kind of result, I guess, from this. Now, a lot of people were Saturday when he didn't wrestle. He medically forfeited the tournament. Iowa made the statement Saturday morning. He didn't weigh in because of it. Now, he wasn't stripped of his points. Okay. So that's a key factor, because people were like, oh, you got to come back and get the next best thing. Other people were like, well, if he's hurt, he's hurt. They did not take the points away. You can't not just show up and not weigh in without a reason, without an excuse. So people have noted that he's kind of had a bigger brace on one of his legs since Minnesota. You kind of wonder if maybe something happened again with his knee. They're not real forthcoming with that information. They obviously don't want people to know about it, and they don't want that to be an excuse. Probably why we may not have heard about it after this, like we did after he won it. He won it. There's no reason for it to be an excuse, so you share that information. Here, they probably don't want it to seem like they're making an excuse, so they stay tight-lipped. There are all kinds of rumors going on. So he ends up showing up. He's there to cheer on his teammates. He was there for the award ceremony. You see an instance. We had a great picture from Ayrton Breckenridge from the Daily Iowan, who contributed and provided photos for us over the weekend. A great picture of him shaking hands with Ramos while they're sitting in chairs before the awards. Okay. So here's my take on Saturday. One, he's probably been wrestling with something that doesn't necessarily debilitate him or hamper him too much, but he has been injured. It wasn't going to affect the team outcome. The difference between 3rd and 6th to him probably doesn't really matter, after still an All-American, not a champion, not in the finals. He's not going. And I really think it was personally, and I don't have any inside information for this, get to the nuts and bolts of my point here. I think he was banged up. I think probably he had something with his knees that wasn't right. And it's we don't want this to affect possibly 2024 or even a world team later this year. It's not going to affect the team. Shutting it down so nothing happens in these two matches that really, in the grand scheme of things, don't really matter.
Right. And, I can probably guess some other things, that, could be situations. I mean, like for instance, and, generally when you're done wrestling for the round, now you got to go check your weight and try and get your weight down for the next day in the next round. And maybe that was an issue, maybe he was overweight. And when you're overweight and you've been crushed, like he was just crushed emotionally, maybe that motivation to do that isn't there. Now tack on the fact that you've got bad knees and the other things that you've mentioned. Yeah, I think those are all possibilities. But they're just for us, it's just possibilities. I do have to say this: I don't think it's a good look, and to do that. And I also don't. And then by not coming out with a statement, that's good. That's fine that's what they're doing. But it also makes everyone wonder, makes us speculate and that sort of thing. So it is what it is. It's not going to change the fact that he medical forfeited out and was sixth place and lost the match. So I don't know that we're ever going to hear the actual reason, and it really doesn't really matter, I guess, at this point in time. But there is the trials that are coming up for the world teams and so forth. I think it's later this month, isn't it? Or in April?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up.
And so if he doesn't wrestle in that, then I don't think he makes one of the teams and gets to participate, in some of the different events this year. So that could very well be an issue, as you mentioned, to try and protect him for that. But obviously it was not a good look, and anyone that's not an Iowa person is going to be all over that in terms of making excuses and bad luck and bashing Iowa like they like to do. So, and so
yeah, plenty of that happened. Plenty of that happened
for sure.
For Iowa overall, they end up finishing second, 82 with 82 and a half points. Point wise, I don't think second I think was best case scenario for them. Points wise, maybe not so much, and but overall, I think the outcome ended up being the same as it would be regardless. Come away with 6 All-Americans. One of the things that, let's talk about Real Woods. Real Woods makes it to the finals. Lost a close one, gave up a big move to Andrew Alvarez from Northern Colorado, who became the Bears' first NCAA Division I national champion under Troy Nickerson. The interesting thing there is he's from Greeley, Colorado. So he literally stayed in his hometown and won a national title there for Northern Colorado, where he probably could have gone elsewhere. But that's huge for that program. But Woods, a good tournament, gets to the finals for the first time. Had probably one of the best comments, I think, and you can kind of weigh in on it here if I can find it so I can read it pretty much verbatim. Here. So I asked him, I said, I sure the sting is pretty fresh and you didn't necessarily get what you want, but is there any solace to the fact that you are wrestling on Saturday night, or you did wrestle on Saturday night, and you were right there in position to win a title? And he goes, I'm definitely proud of myself. I never let that fly. I'm never disappointed in myself, interestingly enough, even after this outcome. I'm not disappointed in myself. I'm angry. I'm just simply angry. It hurts. Like I said, I'm not disappointed. I'm very proud. I'm ready to move forward, and that's what life's about. And that's what's so beautiful about this sport. This is the kind of stuff that you're going to deal with in life. Through any hardship, you're going to deal with this pain and the fact that you need to move forward and continue to move on and grow. And that's just life.
I like
I
that.
thought I thought that was one of the just one of the best responses, and one that I hope a lot of people share with their young athletes, regardless of the sport or level.
Right. I like that. I'm not disappointed in myself. I'm angry. That's fair. That's fair. You know, maybe he's angry with himself, angry that he didn't win it, angry, that's fine. That's fine. But if you're not disappointed, man, good for you. That's a winner's attitude right there.
Well, I think with that is a little bit of I gave it my all. I went out there, I did my best. Can't be disappointed in, going out there and doing what I could do.
Right.
Yeah. Mad that I didn't win. I'm gonna go back to work. There's a lot of things I could do differently. But he knew he gave his best effort out there. It just came up. And really that match boiled down to about a 10 to 12-second flurry there in the second period where Alvarez hit that throw and caught him on the edge for 6. And that was the difference.
Well, that in a 6-minute review.
It turned out to be 8 minutes total.
8 minutes? Oh my goodness.
Flow Wrestling's Christian Piles said in real time it lasted 8 minutes.
I'm for reviews and I'm for a third party doing it. I have no idea why it took 8 minutes. I mean, yeah, it was a tough call, but make the call and let's go on, because now it's a shortened match. It's a what, I don't know how much time was left. Let's say half the match is over now. It's a 3.5 minute match or whatever. So
that was about what it was.
And everyone's fresh and part of training and part of certainly for me, I was a much better wrestler in the third period than I ever was in the first period, because I didn't change a whole lot. I had good conditioning and I wasn't very good in the first period, but the talent that I carried into the third period when the other guy was tired, it got me through a lot of time.
Sure.
So if you're looking for that as one of your assets and one of your weapons, it just took it away. So I mean and it took the fun out of the whole crowd,
Yeah. Yep. So Wood still has a year of eligibility. Expect to see him back. So I think he finished 20-1 overall this year, and should be one of the leaders coming back for Iowa. Tony Cassiope ended up getting 4th at heavyweight. That matched his seed, and probably expected there. 2 that may not have been expected coming in. Nelson Brands and Jacob Warner coming away with 5th place finishes. Both did some great work on the backside, especially Warner. I think he won 5 of 6 consolation matches, 4 straight after losing to Rocky Elam, I believe in the quarterfinals or even in the second round, maybe. Let me double check. But
second round.
Second round?
Yeah, because we've been third and he was 14th, so it's been second round, right?
Okay. So in the second round, and then Elam was the only one to beat him, got him again in the consolation semis 3-1. But Warner bounced back with a win over Ethan Laird of Ryder for 5th place, 7-3 in the placing round. But that's what kept him in second place.
Right.
Is the work that Nelson Brands, Jacob Warner, and Max Murin did on the backside on Friday. That's what helped Iowa get second place just about as much as anything.
Right. Those three guys all wrestled above their seed. Like you said, Warner was 14th seed. Brands was the 11th seed. Murin was the 8th seed. And Murin finished 5th. Brands finished 5th. Murin finished 6th. Brands and Warner finished 5th and had 5 wins on. Nelson was a little different. He won 2 on the front side and then 3 on the back side to be an All-American. But, there's a guy that kind of struggled throughout the year if you think about it. He was out of the lineup, injured, and whatever else. I never really knew exactly what. And that's fine. But, kind of struggled a little bit at the Big Tens. And I'm guessing in his mind anyway. And then had a great showing. I was really proud of Nelson, actually. That's neat. And Max, boy, Max wrestled tough, I thought, in a tough weight class. Gosh, that was just a battle there. Those guys from, the 1 through 8 were just maybe even deeper. Were just so even, I thought, and he did a nice job there.
Yeah, Nelson looked really strong, probably as offensive, and scored as many points as we've seen him throughout the last year or two, going back before his injury where he needed Tommy John last year. But the thing that I thought with Nelson, he said, on his feet he looked good. He admits I got some work to do on bottom, but on top he was like, I was pretty good on top this week, and I didn't know I could do that, which I thought was kind of funny. But he just kind of proved a little something to himself. He mentioned some of the things he had to overcome. He had the surgery and injuries from the motorcycle accident before the season. Was returning from Tommy John surgery to his elbow as well, and something just seemed to click with him. He won a tight match there. That first one he had Faison from North Carolina State, where he got the takedown and turn at the end. Gutted that one out, and I really think that really propelled him forward. Got a takedown against Ethan Smith in the first period, and ended up winning 3-1. And then he gave Mekhi Lewis a 2-0 match as well. So outside of maybe giving up a near fall in the Conci semis, he was in control and really competitive throughout the whole tournament. Warner, somebody kind of asked Warner if the fans were fair to him. First they asked him, what do you want people to remember about Jacob Warner in a Hawkeye singlet? And he said, toughness and grit. And then he said, I don't know, or he goes, I know I wasn't a fan favorite. But when it came down to it, I won tough matches in March, and then somebody asked him if the fans were fair, and he essentially said, I don't know and I don't care. They can think whatever they want, pretty much. He's concerned about the 9 other guys that he's taken the mat with, and was pretty clear that he wrestled for his teammates and for himself. That group of guys that have always been there for him through the good and bad. The fans, if they don't like him, there's not much he can really do about that. So he didn't really care. But I know he's come under a lot of criticism and fire from fans. I know there's maybe been some inconsistencies, but for the most part, Jacob Warner provided a big contribution in his 6 years with the Hawks.
Well, there's good and bad about being coming to a university that has such a rabid fan base like Iowa, that you're going to get the good. Hey, when you win, they're going to be with you, and you're going to have 15,000 people cheering you, you know, and you can raise your hands and celebrate after a big victory or whatever. But then if you don't follow through with that, you know, you're going to also catch the wrath of them too at times. Not all of them, of course, but a certain number of them. So when you kind of sign up to be a wrestler at Iowa, you almost have to kind of expect that. Or I'm sure at Penn State, Nebraska, you know, pick some other schools, you know, that have big fan bases, and you're gonna get that, I bet. So that's part of it. And if you keep matches close and, you know, give up some, and you know that's happened not just to Jacob but through some others on the lineup, you know, that fan base gets a little bit particular about that. So anyway, and going back to Nelson Brands and Mekhi Lewis match. I don't know if you caught that or not, but did you see Lewis's finger dislocate?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! And he didn't take a injury timeout. You know, and at the time it's either 0-0 or 1-0. It must have been 1-0, I think, at the time when that happened. I don't remember if it was first or second period, but anyway, and he, you know, so now the rest of the match he's trying to get that thing back in place.
Back in place.
And then they followed him. The cameras followed him after the match in his interviewing him, and the trainers kind of using his body to block as he's trying to pull the finger and put it back in place. I'm like, holy moly, that's a tough animal right there. But
yeah, that's a tough guy. So, and I was happy for Max Murin too. You know, I know he was an NWCA All-American in 2020, but this time at the NCAA tournament ends up on the podium. Three appearances in the blood round and lost them all. This time he gets through. I believe he won in sudden victory as well to earn that top 8 finish, and just really happy for him. And here's the thing that you know, Warner and Murin, you know, you always saw Jacob Warner kind of dancing at the bench whenever Max would come out to Ice Baby, and you know, they were always fun and entertaining. After it was all done and they're talking about one another in front of the media, Jacob Warner shared the stories about you know, this year being 6-year senior, sometimes you got to do some other training methods to keep your body from kind of wearing down. So they did a lot of pool workouts, you know, kind of lower impact workouts that, you know, a lot of track athletes do and stuff. And I think there were some track athletes that were there with them, but he laughed about Murin's inability to actually swim and how somehow Max would only swim with one arm. And of course, we're confused. And somebody asked, "What do you mean?" He goes, he refused to pull his right arm out of the water. He would just go with one arm. And he goes, he's a terrible swimmer. He goes, he's a terrible swimmer. He goes, I thought he was going to drown. I think everybody thought he was going to drown during those workouts. And then he finally we asked Max about him. And he talked about how he admits he's a terrible swimmer, but apparently the other athletes in Warner nicknamed him Nemo because of he's got one little flipper and one big flipper, and that's how he would kind of swim. But I think it was indicative of just how much fun those two have together. I think they'd be a great comedy duo. Go out and have some shows together, because I think they have some pretty good stories. But it also showed a lot of the fun that people think is void in the Iowa program. And I think you had two seniors that are leaving now that had a lot of fun with their team, a lot of fun together, and they finally ended up finishing their careers on the podium together. And I was kind of happy for Warner and Aaron in that way.
2 comments. One, you can ask my kids. I love Nemo. That's an awesome movie.
I do too. I do too, actually.
Slip me some in. Anyway, and then secondly, if you my picture is on senior night after the meet when they're introducing Spencer Lee. Do you remember what happened?
No.
Jacob Warner and Max Murin grabbed Lee and put him up on his shoulders.
Oh, that's right. Lift them up.
And I just that's what I meant. Picture those guys and the fun they bring to the team and keeping it light and so yeah, that's a great story.
So Iowa coming back, they'll have 3 All-Americans back with Cassiope, Woods, and Brands. You also have a few national qualifiers in Assad at 84, Patrick Kennedy at 165, Seabrecht at 57, Brody Teskey at 33, and then I assume Drake Ayala being back, a 2022 national qualifier at 125. So we should mention too that Iowa just received a commit from, I believe it's Anthony Ferrari, brother of AJ Ferrari. He was a 2022 graduate. Not sure what he's been doing the last year, but he's somebody that could fit in the middle of the lineup. Cody Chittum is somebody that is a world level competitor that is expected to step in at 49.57. So they've got some holes to fill, but seems like there's some talent that could step in. I just see Iowa kind of holding steady, as a top 2 or 3 team again.
So my thoughts on the Ferrari signing, that's a slippery slope.
Mm-hmm.
It can be based on, and this is maybe unfair, but based on brother, and so that's that slippery slope. But if in fact it is a situation like that, what coach, if they're in it for the athlete, wouldn't want to have have the opportunity to help change a person's life, and maybe make them a better person. And if they're a fair wrestler, pretty good wrestler, is that fair to criticize a program for bringing that wrestler on board, maybe looking greedy or something? I think that's unfair, man. If that wasn't the situation, you'd still be recruiting that athlete. But now you have the opportunity to maybe a DeSantos sort of a thing, who I think is better off for being at Iowa.
Yep. And, and I know that's something that is a big deal to Terry Brands, and I know the work they did with Montel Marion, I think, was along that line as well. DeSantos, another. I want to say there was even something with Henry Cejudo Flow documentary where Terry was, that was part of Henry's growth to becoming an Olympic champion, was kind of helping him use wrestling to kind of iron out his life a little bit. So I think there is a big part of Terry that uses wrestling to help people become just better people in general. Well, let's kind of transition to Iowa State's performance at the NCAAs. The Cyclones flirted with a top 10 finish. They ended up 11th overall. Had 2 All-Americans and David Carr, who reached the 165-pound finals, and then Marcus Coleman, who got 5th at 184. The interesting thing with this, you look at how they did and only 2 All-Americans, and you kind of scratch your head because it seemed like I think personally, Iowa State had a pretty good showing, and kind of surprised when it was all said and done, just 2 All-Americans to show for it. But I don't know. I thought Iowa State wrestled decently. I'm sure there's some disappointments along the way, but I thought they had a good tournament overall. Just could have been better in a couple places.
Right there, I think it's hot and cold. They had three wrestlers lose in the blood round. Redding, Swiderski, and Schuyler. And Redding was seeded 14th, so put him in that top 12. So Swiderski was seeded 24th, put him in that top 12. So that's above seeds. But then you have Schuyler, who was seeded 8th, didn't make that. So that's a bit of a disappointment there. I'm sure they're disappointed with that. And then their biggest disappointment has to be with Johnson, who was seeded 5th and went 1 and 2. And there's a guy, I mean, again, a tough weight class, but there's a guy that was good enough to win it and obviously not good enough to not even play. So that has to be a disappointment for him. So you're right. You know, Carr, obviously that's a disappointment for them. Second nation, and it's a disappointment. That's how good he is. And then Coleman wrestled right to a seed and did a good job, I thought, at 5th seed. So,
yeah. You can see the emotions from Marcus Coleman a little bit after he was done. The thing that, we talked about Alvarez being from Greeley, Colorado. Here, Coleman was a whole hometown boy, from Ames, was 3-time state champ at Ames High School. It was interesting to hear him talk about how things have come full circle for him, where he was a young kid, as a boy trying to get autographs from, the Cyclone athletes. And now he's signing autographs for other kids that, kind of want to be like him. I thought it was a really neat gesture when he was done. He was walking off the arena floor, took his headgear and he flipped it to a young kid in the stands. Love stuff like that because, you see the kid kind of take it and fold it and tell his friends, "I'm going to keep this. I'm going to keep it." It's mine now. That's pretty cool. And really happy when he broke out last year because, last year he made this jump. This year he just kind of continued that climb. Had a win over Aaron Brooks earlier in the season. Had a good tournament. Really happy for Marcus Coleman in the way he ended things.
Agreed, 100%. He had a hurdle within the state with having and within his conference with he and Keckeisen, but Marcus did a great job, and I think those two made each other better, knowing that they couldn't look too far back, without seeing that person right there.
Yep. Well, let's talk about David Carr. 165. We mentioned some of the weight classes being really tough. 165 was just a grinder. For example, Carr, for example, just to become an All-American, he had to survive a matchup against another national champ. Quarterfinal match against two national champs facing each other in the quarters. That's crazy to think about.
Right, and he had to do it with writing time, and then fend off a really great shot right at the buzzer, if I remember right, from Grip. And I mean, wow, and I'm going to deviate from Carr for a second, going to Shane Griffith. It was a neat response that the crowd gave him when he won what became his last match. It was a placement match. They gave him a standing ovation, knowing good and well his legacy was he helped save that Stanford program. So that's worth a little deviation here, I thought.
That was cool.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And then, Carr's reward for beating another national champ in the quarters was facing a national runner-up in the semis, having to face Quincy Monday, and that was a come from behind win. He got in a 4-0 hole there in the first and battled back to win to beat Monday on riding time again. but how cool is it, 40 years after their fathers wrestled each other in the finals at 150, won by Nate Carr in overtime. Nate Carr and Kenny Monday, two greats in college and even international competition. Their sons go at it in the semifinals 40 years later, and it comes down to 1 point, but Carr coming away, with a win there, and then, again, the reward, you face another national champ, and the third time in what, 4 weeks, but the Carr Keegan O'Toole rivalry certainly is a special one.
Right. And I mean, so he had to go through two national champs, or had to wrestle two national champs, and then Monday. I believe that was this, if I remember right, that's like the 7th time that Carr and Monday have wrestled.
Oh, is it really?
So they're very familiar, obviously, but that was really one that I was looking forward to in the semifinals. But so really being the number 1 seed in this bracket ended up not being the number 1 seed, because he had a gauntlet that he had to run through.
Yeah.
And then, so Keegan's O'Toole's half was better looking, compared to David's. Even his round of 16 on the front side was against Austin Yount from UNI, who made it to the round of 12 on the backside, if I remember right. But
yep.
So even that one wasn't all that easy in terms of where Yount finished. But in the championship match, I have to give it to O'Toole. He came out and from the get-go was on the offensive and never let David. I mean, David really didn't have much of an attack at all and was out of the match, I thought, from the get-go. And sadly, but that's the credit to O'Toole for doing that and taking the Carr out of his game plan.
I thought Carr was still in it. Into the third period, but there was an exchange there where Keegan O'Toole showed his flexibility there. His flexibility is something that is unnatural. I mean, he is absolutely fantastic with you think you have him, and he's able to get out of certain positions, and he fended off a takedown attempt and then turned it into 2 of his own. Then ended up getting the 2 near fall to really kind of, cement things. But, that exchange in the third period where he was able to counter and then turn it into his own points was pretty phenomenal, and kind of shows you just how good he is.
I think those 2 athletes are, I mean, they're athletic like the 33-pounders were.
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe not quite as athletic as those 33-pounders, but they're so good. I mean, they're way beyond what I ever would hope to be in my heyday.
David Carr, just absolutely all class from him. Next year, coming back, 1 more year of eligibility left. I believe he became the first 2-time finalist for Iowa State since Jake Varner made 4 straight national finals from 2007 to 2010. So that was a nice accomplishment, a nice way to bounce back after last year's disappointment where, he got upset as a 10 seed or number 1 seed in the second round. He battled back to get 3rd last year, but here he returned to the finals. So expect more from David Carr in the future here for Iowa State. I know there are a lot of rumblings and rumors kind of floating around about, he's going to go out to Penn State. You look how tight he was with Aaron Brooks and some of those guys. And, the same thing Said the same thing last year. You know, one thing I'll point out to about Iowa State, and maybe I end up getting proved wrong here, but at the state tournament, the first person to meet Tate Knockaborn after his finals loss to Gabe Arnold was David Carr. David Carr was there. He was there to talk and kind of give some advice and was right there for Tate Knockaborn. If that's somebody that's interested in leaving, why would he be there to help future Cyclones? You know what I mean? So you're not going to stop the rumor mill from churning, especially with certain fans. But I mean, it's just silly to sit there and think that when David Carr's been nothing but all in with Iowa State. So I think it's silly for people to talk about how he's probably transferring to Penn State when he's done nothing but been there for Iowa State, and he's vested in the future of Iowa State, which was evidenced in him being there for Tate Knockaborn after the Iowa high school finals. So can't wait to see David Carr give another title run in a year from now at Iowa State.
What a classy kid, you know, off the mat, like you said. I remember when I first got to see him, took Kyle down to a youth tournament in Kansas City, and I of course knew Nate, so I saw him following David around, and I'm going. I got to watch him wrestle a little bit, and I'm going, holy cow, this guy's special, even back then. So so here's a guy that's finished, first, third, second. So let's hope he can come back and get that first, and elects to come back next year. It sounds like he will.
Yep. I know you mentioned Zach Redding, what he was able to do at 133. He had a good tournament, even though that he kind of came up short. The other one I kind of want to mention, Casey Swiderski. He's had his struggles throughout the year. Started out really, really strong, if you remember. Then kind of hit a tough stretch. Entered the tournament 11-10, but man, he really seemed to catch fire on the backside. He lost his opener to Moses Schwartz of Oklahoma, and then he followed with a decision and then a fall over a kid from Cornell. Beat Frankie Tal Shahar, who at one time was ranked as high as like 5 or 6 in the country. Then lost to Parker Filius of Purdue in the blood round, but I thought he showed flashes of what a lot of people thought they'd get for the majority of the season. And that's something that they'll be able to build on going forward.
And absolutely, like I mentioned, he is 24 to see that made it all the way to that All-American / blood round. So yeah, great tournament from Casey.
So Iowa State coming back, you're going to have 2 All-Americans in David Carr and Younger Bastida. You've got national qualifiers in Panero Johnson, Casey Swiderski, Zach Redding, Keckeisen Terakina will be back. He's a national qualifier at 125. Hopefully he'll be healthy and look like his former self next year for the Cyclones. You have Julian Broderson, who is a starter this year, that's back. You never know what the transfer portal will bring in and how they kind of fill a couple of those holes, especially with Marcus Coleman, Jason Kreiser, graduating. But I just see a little bit more of a jump. If David Carr would have won, and I know if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, it'd be Christmas all year long, right? But they would have finished ninth. They would have passed North Carolina State and Virginia Tech had David Carr won in the finals. They were only 2 points back of Virginia Tech in ninth, who was in ninth. So they were within the 9 of that top 10 finish. With what they have coming back, they've got a big hole they're going to have to fill at heavyweight for sure. And a big hole at 184 with Coleman graduating. But I just have a feeling Iowa State's going to keep projecting forward.
Right. And do you know what year Kabamban is?
I think he's a senior.
He graduated. Okay. Yep. So yeah, you're right. So that happens every year with every team. You have your graduates, but we'll see how they fill in. But I think all three of the state schools are going to have some fun lineups again next year.
Yeah. Let's switch to Cedar Falls in for the Panthers. The Panthers finished 16th overall. They had an amazing start to the tournament. And I think they wrestled well overall. Parker Keckeisen, the only All-American, reaching the 184 final. He was the top seed, faced Aaron Brooks. But I think you could just tell there were a little bit of nerves there from the get-go. Wasn't quite himself, gave up a point for 3 cautions, I believe. And I think Doug Schwab kind of pointed out that, when you're doing stuff like that and you've never done that before, probably a good indication that there's some nerves going on. But still a strong tournament. Keckeisen making his first appearance in the finals, even though he ended up falling to Aaron Brooks in the championship match, 7-2.
Right.
What was your take on Parker's performance?
Well, first of all, it should be mentioned that Aaron Brooks is a 2-time champion, now a 3-time champion, and coming back next year. And so no slouch there, obviously. My take on it was Parker makes a living on his feet. He wears people down. And if he doesn't get you in the first period, he's going to get you in the second period and then try and run away with it in the third period. But he was not able to do that with Brooks. He wasn't able to close the gap and be able to get his shots. Brooks had that distance, and he's quick enough and had that defense that just never really allowed Keckeisen to get a good solid attack. And it was just kind of straight on attacks. And so that was my take on it. I just thought Brooks out-wrestled him.
Yep. And, still a good performance. He improved on 2 straight third place finishes. The thing that's interesting, if you see Allison Schwab's social media accounts, there's a video of the UNI wrestling room bustling with wrestlers this afternoon, or it would be Monday afternoon, actually, at 3:00, right? Same time that they have practice throughout the season. Monday after the Nationals, there are a bunch of guys in the wrestling room, kind of working on things, running around, working out. And Parker mentioned that after his finals match. Well, go back to work now, and that starts Monday. So they're already back in it. I think that's a sign of the culture that Doug Schwab has built there at UNI. As I mentioned, Keckeisen was one of them, kind of running around and getting a sweat in, and I think that's exactly what's going to allow them to kind of keep growing. They had a good tournament overall. That 7-0 start in that first session was big. The only downside of that is that made for some hellacious matchups in the second round, right? Because of their seeding, and then now they're going up against number 1 seeds at 65 and the number 2 seed at 33, and stuff like that all the way through. So that second round, really kind of balanced things out from the success they had in the first. And Doug Schwab said, "Hey, you got to beat people that you're not expected to beat." But it doesn't change the fact that they started out like gangbusters, and they had 2 or 3 guys that made it to that. One went away from the podium threshold. Kyle Biscaglia made it to the blood round at 33. Austin Yant did so at 65, like you mentioned earlier. And then I think Terrell Gordon, and then Cale Happel ended up 2 wins away from the podium. And big for Cale Happel too. Went to Tulsa, to 0-4 in Tulsa before the NCAA tournament, right? 0-2 at last year's Big 12s, 0-2 at this year's Big 12s. He wins his first round match against Casimir from Columbia. Ends up winning, going 2-2 overall, with a win over a guy from West Virginia, Titus of West Virginia. But overall, I think it was a positive tournament, but they're not going to be satisfied with how things turned out.
Right. Backing up to the second round, and they went 7-0 in the first round, and then they had such crappy seeds, other than of course Parker. They had in their second round, the six matches other than Parker were let's see, 5 of those 6 were 4th seed or better, and then one of them was a 6 seed that they had to face, and so they went 0-6 there. But then they came back and wrestled well on the backside, just not well enough to place. A couple were there, and you mentioned Allison's video. I did not see that, but I did see a picture that she posted with permission from Cale Happel, where and KJ, you know this because you've been in that tunnel. I know it because I've lived it in that tunnel, and I'm going to go to a specific moment with you and me and another one of my wrestlers that I really appreciated. But I've been there and done that. When Cale had lost, he was collapsed down on the kind of on all fours and head down, and there's a neat picture. She did it in black and white, which is even more effective. And
Yep.
It's a picture of Doug with his hand on his back, not saying anything, just there, letting Cale know that he's there for him and hurting for him and that sort of thing. And I always remember that you came up to you wanted to talk to me or interview me regarding Kyle at a match at state, but it was after one of my wrestlers right after Kyle had lost his medal at state. And it was painful. It was painful for me. I believe it was Tavian Rashad, maybe Matt Culver.
Yep.
It was just painful, and it wasn't a good time. And you recognized that, you saw it, you backed off, and you gave us our moment to kind of rally. But that's a tough job as a coach, because you hurt for those kids, and then Allison really captured that.
Yes.
and I hurt for Cale, because watching him through the years grow up and go through that Lisbon program, and now you and I, you want the best for him, because that's a great family.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. And that's where I wish. Okay, so I'm not gonna badmouth fans at all, because fandom is exactly that. It's fandom, right? But I wish a lot of people that were so critical of athletes, because they're so easy. And I don't know if Nathan's going to edit this out, because I'm going to get a little blue, with my language here. But the comments that I'm talking about, so-and-so sucks, or this guy can't beat shit, and this guy can't do this, and he's effing this. And okay, so you can sit back and you can say all that crap from section 215 or wherever, you go down in the tunnels and um, you see images like that. You see hundreds of kids like that. And I say kids because they're in their early 20s at the oldest, even though they're men. But you see images like that a lot, and you know it. You've seen tons of it. Uh, Dreams are ripped away from people. You know, these are people that have done. They've spent so much time and effort and money just for some. You know, not necessarily for the medal, but it's for the personal achievement of, you know, all that work coming into some tangible uh finish, right? And you see the emotions of somebody that just had that dream end. You realize how much they cared. I mean, I won't say the name of who it was, but there was a wrestler that lost his placing match, and coaches had to pick him up off his knees in the tunnel, and he was sobbing. And this is a tough son of a gun, a tough son of a bitch in the tunnel, crying his eyes out because he lost his last match. And the coaches are picking him up and saying, hey, you know, think of everything you've done, you know, but it still hurt. They're still hurt. But yeah, the fans ticked off because he finished 8th instead of 7th, or 6th instead of 5th, and you want to badmouth them and say stuff, or you want to badmouth the coach because, you know, their dual record was 7-5 instead of, you know, 10-2 like you think it should have been. But they're the ones, like in that picture, you know, they're there consoling somebody that had their dream. They've worked with them night and day to get to a certain point, and then when that dream doesn't come true, they're the ones that have to be there to help pick up the pieces and direct that athlete to a certain direction, so they're still moving forward, to help them pick up the pieces and go on, whether it's to the next season or to life in general. You know, you've done it with countless wrestlers at Jefferson, um, and even at the college level. You've had family members. You know what it's like. And I wish people could see that in the tunnel and how much these athletes care and how much they put in, whether it's sweat equity or everything else, and sacrifices throughout not just the year, but throughout their lives. And maybe some of these fans would just shut the hell up when it comes to the criticism that they have for coaches and athletes.
Uh,
Not saying that they don't have the right to criticize, but the level of their criticism sometimes is overboard. And if they understood exactly how much heartache and pain and joy and happiness that comes with chasing their dreams, accomplishing it, or falling short, maybe they would just shut the hell up sometimes.
yeah, and as a coach, you get to see that, and it doesn't matter what level. I've seen and have been so proud of my wrestlers that were junior varsity 5th place finishers at the MVC tournament, and that was their state meet, and that was a tremendous finish for them, way above what their the expectations before the meet. Or instances where I've had, you know, a high state medalist, a number 2 state medalist, and a number 8 state medalist. When the 8th place finished, he was sobbing, and I said, "Man, listen," but you know, I'm not going to say his name, but he said, "I'm as proud of you for that, for the growth. I know what it took for you to get that 8th place medal.
Right.
That means as much to me as that 2nd place medal that your teammate has, and the growth that you've had throughout the year and throughout your career. I'm so proud of you." And then as to the fans, what's happened is, and this is a little microcosm, I think, this is me on my soapbox here. I think it's a microcosm of society. The fan now has gotten a voice right here. We can do a video, we can get on social media, we can, and you know what? If we give them that ability, then that's a power we've extended to them. I choose to not pay attention to it. If I read it, it goes in one and out the other, and I'm not going to let them, you know, affect me. But that's not everyone, and you know, people read into that. Now they start talking on it. Some are anonymous, and they can get even more vicious. Others use their name, and that's fine, but they still are kind of negative. And it's like, man, I love the social media posts that are so positive and the ones that make me want to cheer when I read them. Those are the ones I want to read. And that's when we're going to have a better society and actually a better sport too, I think. So.
Yeah. So to bring it back, yeah, that image that Allison Schwab shared in the message that came with it really thought was really, really cool. So maybe that opens up the eyes for a lot of people to see kind of what goes on, especially with the wrestlers and the wrestling coaches dynamic and stuff like that. So,
you know, everybody from north of here, huh? Tanner Sloan.
Tanner Sloan, I tell you what, ended up being the highest seed to make the finals, number 7 seed for South Dakota State. Boy, I tell you what, he had a heck of a tournament. Beat Bernie Truex of Cal Poly, who was number 2 seed. Avenged the loss to Rocky Elam, who beat him in the Big 12 championships, and actually dominated him pretty much in the semifinal.
And Elam
made the final and had a chance. Was close to a national title against Nino Bonacorsi from Pitt. Came up just a little short, but man, very happy for him. The performance that he had to get to the finals and earn his first All-American honor.
Right, and I was doing this because Elam was the 3rd seed, so he beat the number 2 seed, he beat the number 3 seed, and then took down the number 1 seed in the finals, and then just couldn't hang on to it. Looked like Bonacorsi is a big fella, and I think Tanner was a little bit outsized there and ran out of gas a little bit or something or other. I don't know what, but just couldn't hang on to it. And good match. I'm very proud of him, man.
Yeah.
So,
you know, and he's made some big strides. I know he's had had some injuries before. Talked about the disappointment of losing in the blood round the year before, but he's really continued to thrive under Damian Hahn, Cody Caldwell, Cam Simaz, up there at South Dakota State. Big confidence boost during the freestyle season in 2022, where he was a world silver medalist at the U23 World Championships. So just seeing this growth, this evolution from him. He ended up I want to say 27-3 overall. His 2 losses came to Bonacorsi, who was the national champ, and then Rocky Elam, who finished 3rd overall. So I mean, just a great tournament. And the thing that I kind of remember with him is that he seemed like he was close to I know the agriculture, kind of a farm kid, and that background was big for him. And it was either maybe go to Co and stay home and kind of learn and work on the farm there, or go maybe to the ag school at South Dakota State. And boy, it ends up being a really, really good choice for him. 4-time qualifier, is going to be back next year. Saw something on Facebook that he said, I'll be back again. So he's going to use that COVID year. 4-time national qualifier, now a national finalist. And, really excited to see how he continues to grow and get better. Has a really good rapport with Cody Caldwell, the assistant coach, former Waverly Shell Rock State champ, former UNI wrestler, and really excited to see the future gains that he makes going forward, and is going to be a huge contender at 197 again next year.
Right, I was real proud of him and happy for his family. It's fun to watch him and get to know them as Kyle and he were going through. They actually wrestled each other.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's odd because last year when Kyle was wrestling, he had wrestled pretty much someone at every weight, all the way from you and I's 25 pounder from Bettendorf, all the way up to Boone McDermott, heavyweight. Sometime throughout their career, coming through youth, that someone at every weight. That's pretty neat, actually.
Wow, that is pretty cool. And the other one too, to mention really quick. Well, first off, Tanner Sloan, that quarterfinal over Truax, he was down, he gave up the first takedown, had to come back. They went to sudden victory, he scored in sudden victory where he actually was the aggressor and took it to Truax and got the winning takedown, and then came back. Rocky Elam beat him in the Big 12 finals, was 2-1 and tiebreaker 1, and Elam didn't score an offensive point. It was a point for an escape in regulation, and then a point for riding time advantage in the tiebreaker. This time I said, what was the difference? And Tanner Sloan said, I got a chance on top this time, which when he's on, Tanner Sloan can ride and turn guys pretty well. That allowed him to avenge that loss, and really, really happy for Tanner and the Sloans, and expecting some bigger things coming forward. One other thing of note too, Michael Blockus, who's at Minnesota, according to Jim Nelson at the Waterloo Courier, he is planning on coming back next year. He's got 1 year of eligibility left, so he's going to be back, according to Jim Nelson. But he was an All-American for Minnesota, of course, former UNI wrestler who won titles at Crestwood and New Hampton previously as an Iowa prep. So good finish for him.
A comment and a question from me. Okay, my comment is this. So did you happen to see, no, that's a question, isn't it? My comment, is Bryce Andonia from Virginia Tech at 157. What a fun, exciting wrestler. Holy cow. And
he opens things up.
With Levi Haynes, I don't know if that pin sure looked like it was there, but I don't know.
It was close.
Yeah, I think it was more than close, but what do I know? I'm sitting in Iowa watching it. And then my question is, and this is a question that you kind of sparked. I just read it just before we started. So with Spencer Lee kind of falling out of the picture, who becomes your front runner for the Hodge Award? And does a person with a loss win it this year?
Boy.
I mean,
was there anybody that finished undefeated? Was Starocha the only one that went undefeated?
I don't know. I guess I thought Glory was undefeated. And then
Glory was undefeated. Let's see, I'm just kind of looking through.
Alvarez was undefeated. And of course, Yianni, who might be a front runner, had a loss. So, front runner since he's a 4-timer. O'Connor was undefeated. Heavyweight wasn't Harris undefeated?
Yes, he was. He finished 33-0.
And then
Bonacorsi was undefeated as well, 21-0. So we got quite a few. Brooks
he had a loss.
17-1. 24-0 for Starachi. O'Toole, obviously, his 2 losses to Carr, he was 20-2. Austin O'Connor was undefeated at 23-0. One of the things that factors in is bonus point rate. Don't have that in front of me, but man, so the Hodge Trophy criteria, it's it's record, there's past accomplishments, um, there's bonus point dominance, there's heart. You know, they factor heart and character and stuff like that into it as well. That's all part of the criteria for determining. And I mentioned past. I you know I just think probably it ends up being Yianni more as a career award. Um, you know, um, Strachey with a pin in the finals, but I don't necessarily know how much he really bonus pointed, what his bonus point rate was. Um, I think he would be there. Mason Paris probably would be right up there as well. Um, you know, you have to look at Patrick Glory um as well. So I guess that's kind of where I'd go as far as my top four. Maybe uh, you know, maybe Alvarez, you know,
Yep. So,
number five.
okay, I'm gonna go, if they don't give it to Yianni, with his loss, that puts a wrinkle into it, so here's a four-time national champ, only the fifth ever, who you'd think would be the winner. But
Mhm.
if he's not, then I'm gonna go with, to me, it's again, I don't know the bonus points, sort of thing. So I'm going to go with Strachey / Paris.
Okay. Good way to hedge your bet there.
So anyway, there you go. Having some fun with that.
Was there a champ that really stood out to you as far as,
Yeah.
is it Vito? Is
Yes.
Vito the one that really stands out?
He's the one.
I tell you, I didn't see his match against Fix. Just saw that, he majored him.
Yeah.
And then for him to turn around and almost major RBY and the way that he did it, I was so, my mouth was hanging open almost the entire match after seeing, the first takedown, then seeing that single that he finished on the second takedown, and then that 6-point move where he that kind of trip kickback kind of.
Yeah.
I just was almost the entire final watching him. I was so impressed.
Right. And I have to say this, Arusha was the guy, man, for me. But Strachey, that was the one I was least looking forward to watching. And with Strachey and Labriola. And then Labriola rolled over and I mean, literally rolled right over. And
Yeah.
Strachey kind of released and caught him and pinned him. And I'm like, yes, I don't have to watch it. So he did me a favor there.
Yeah.
Anyway, but then boy, the other ones were fun. I enjoyed the finals.
Any parting words or comments about the championships or the season or?
Good season, and thank you. I know it's a ton of work for you, and you're away from your family and sleeping in a foreign bed and all that. And so, thank you very much for doing that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So it was it was a fun season. And now you're already seeing some of the things starting to pop up. We mentioned the commitment that the University of Iowa got. I'm sure there will be some movement from program to program. Um, we'll see. Oklahoma, I believe, fired their coach already, Russelli. So I think they're looking for a new coach. So we'll see what happens there. Oklahoma State's coming off their worst finish ever. We'll see what happens there with if there's any movement with wrestlers in or out and any other changes that might pop up. But sure there'll be some exciting transactions to go in the off season. So even though it won't be wrestling season, there'll be plenty of action, maybe with transfers and stuff like that. So, that'll factor in come next year for sure now with the way things are with the transfer portal.
Yep. Good season. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Coach. Thank you for everything that you've done this year. I've enjoyed whether it's our weekly podcasts or whether it's calling duels on KCRG 9.2 throughout the season, or covering the D2s and the women's national tournament here in Cedar Rapids as well together. So thank you for everything that you do and the way you give back. So many ways. You've done it as a wrestler, you've done it as a coach, you're doing it as part of the media and as a referee. So thank you for everything that you do for the sport of wrestling.
Oh, I love it.
And with that, one last time, the words of Wyatt Schultz.
We miss you, Wyatt. Let's keep wrestling on the move.